Hi all, good morning. Thank you for joining us today to talk about performance engineering, which is one of the really relevant topics today in the everybody working remote coronavirus world. We do have some of the leading experts on performance engineering on the call today. In fact, the authors of the the State of Performance Engineering report that we started publishing out from this year as Capgemini Sogeti together with our technology partner Neotis here. We're really excited to present the findings of the report to the group of attendees out here today. And we are hoping to have some maybe good follow-up conversations or some very good interactive questions in the session today. So with that, without wasting too much time, I would like to hand it over to Antoine, one of the authors of the report. So over to you, Antoine.
Thank you, Jeba. So yeah, that's actually a joint initiative, a joint research that we've done with Neotis. I'm Antoine, a French guy located far away from the US in France. I'm currently the CTO for Sogeti, all QA related activities. And my buddy today is Paul. Paul.
Yeah, hi. My name is Paul. I'm Director of Customer Engineering at Neotis. I focus a lot on solutions architecture, helping people make good and right decisions about where they're going in terms of their journey. Sometimes I get to be able to say, hey, this is how our technology works, but it's a lot of listening and a lot of understanding. And I get to work with pretty much all aspects of our business here in one way or another at Neotis. So thank you so much for having me, Anton.
All right. Okay. So let's have a discussion and just review on that report. So if you want to to go to the next slide, my friend Stefan. So let me just having a glance of how the report was built. I often have questions, not just in terms of statistics, trends, but also in terms of how the report was built. So I won't comment too much on the segment, industry, size of companies, because it's right on the screen. I think the most interesting aspect, so this report was done in 2 steps. The first step is we selected 500, a little bit more than 500 participants, all in IT and all dealing with some aspect of performance, whether it's monitoring, testing, and engineering as a whole, right? And that was, the first research. So we had around 30 questions, trying to really assess various activities around applications performance activities. But that was probably not the most important step. That was only step number 1, data research gathering. The second step was much more interesting for us. We had a great number of interviews, each lasted almost 2 hours long. And the idea was to assess, to challenge the data, the results of the survey, and really to get, let's say, tips, recommendations, trends, and really assessing how people are driving applications performance in their life. And almost all European countries, Canada, US, India, many practitioners, coming from different segments with complementary skills and responsibilities were pulled into the report. And again, we only have half an hour. There are so much more in the report than the trends that we have here. If you want to get crisp example around the cultural aspect, the structural aspect, the practices, how performance is integrated in CI/CD, there are a lot of very crisp examples you can figure out in the report itself. So again, this is not just a basic research. The most important aspect for us was to have this hands-on experience and expertise that we can drive into the report. Right. Okay. Let's move on. So obviously, there was something going on right when we actually started the research, which was the things you can see on the right-hand side. And obviously, this also impacted the way we structured the questionnaire. We, obviously implemented some questions around impact on COVID, how customers are surviving. And we've been very focused on assessing how companies are driving or maybe having a surge of change of transformations because of the pandemic, because of the underlying technology that needs to be there to sustain resilient performance. And we've seen some very interesting use case that we've also put in the report, such as a UK furnishing retailer, Denand, who reported in the lockdown weeks of spring 100% increase in sales, right, which was very impressive. Not surprising, but very impressive. And we know that many other companies actually struggle. There's also another very interesting aspect where some businesses relied on online vendors just remained alive. And there was a very interesting example with a pizza company in the UK again called Pilgrim, who had to close all of their stores in the London and Oxford region, for 2 months. And they went from making 30,000 pizzas to 0 in a week time, right? And they were about to close the shop. So what they did, within a few days, they created a pizza kit, and they actually sold it on Shopify. And obviously, Shopify has a solid enough applications performance for Pilgrim to stay alive. So there was a very interesting aspect where a company is trying to, work together just to remain, just alive, let's say. Maybe you have different experience here, Paul?
No, I think it echoes it, right? The old paradigm was, wow, digital transformation. Okay, well, we have maybe a year. We're already late, right? Like everybody says, okay, well, we're already late to that game. And so, oh man, we're going to need to build a major plan. We're going to need to strategize and all that stuff. And it's going to take a couple of years at least. And as it turns out, that was, in a sad way, it was late, but it was proactive, right? It was trying to take an approach of let's plan the work and work the plan. With COVID, now all of a sudden business changes significantly, whether it's an uptick, a significant uptick, or in your user or subscribership, or whether that's other people are responding faster. That happened relatively overnight, right, compared to the digital transformation. And so we need to get very precise. One of our customer examples is a large education platform that was used to doing good performance practices for sure, right? Their actual culture was to work with the devs and ops teams to really figure out what's exactly going on. But, they had 2-year timeframes to double their size before COVID. And now all of a sudden, everybody's waiting for the colleges to shut down to tell us that in fact, the education system is going to have a significant virtual uptick. And so that happened overnight, and people started to really figure out what makes sense to work together very precisely on, right? And that they do have to put their systems through 2-3x load to really understand the ripple effect of this throughout all of their subsystems, cloud or otherwise, right?
There might be something, on the topic of the actual context, where, I've been in this world like you for more than a decade, getting old. There's a sort of ongoing paradox. We know, and it's not a surprise. I mean, we are all on this call, very much professional around applications performance. We know the importance of it. And to a certain extent, all of us, whether we are professional or end users, we are very well aware of the importance of applications performance. This is critical. There's been so many numbers of research papers done, and this one is, just a complement to what has been in the past, maybe with an updated eye. But there's a paradox between the importance of applications performance and especially now versus how we invest into it, how we are structurally organized to make it happen. And unfortunately, and that might be just a human thing, after all, we're just human beings here, that we are waiting for issues to happen. And the thing is, now there's a surge, there's a urgency just to make it change, but for many of us, that's actually maybe a bit too late. So, and the thing is, sometimes it is weird that business puts so much effort into online advertising, pushing to customers, and it all goes down to deceiving customers because of poor applications performance. And this is what we have to change. And there's this fundamental paradox here, the gap between business and IT that this report actually figured out. I mean, that's the main thing that we need, and it's not a technology one. You know, it's a human thing. It's a cultural aspect that needs to be changed before talking about CRC, which we're going to be talking a little bit about later. Then, just on the next slide, actually, guys, I wanted to bring a sort of not this one. I think we've sort of debated it now. You want to, yeah. So if we have just a step back here in terms of how applications performance is measured today, right? We as professional engineers, consultants, technology vendors, we central IT. So what we measure is the actual experience. The world of ours is stability, reliability, crash, responsiveness, throughput, uptime, you know, all these words, SLA, SLOs, all these things that actually matters, for which we know that performance is critical, and we measure the effectiveness and efficiency of our job according to these indicators. However, if we take the business perspective, they're more on the perceived experience, okay, maybe outside the financial aspect, in terms of NPS, especially with marketing, review mining, the voice of the customer. So we see that straight away, applications performance is can be measured and understood, you know, from different perspective here. And there's actually this gap that we have to close together. And I think there was a very interesting statement that the sociologist Cameron said in 1963, which, you know, I've just wrote for me as a note here. Not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. And I think this is exactly what I'm trying to underline with where we are today with applications performance, this gap that we have to fill as a priority number one.
That's right. That's right. You need context, but you also need prioritization.
Yes,
and I think what's sorely lacking, there are some companies who are doing it well, right? People who understand how to do this, but there is a big gap between what it means to do good performance from an IT perspective in the operations and architectures of a system versus what the business sees. And I think you need both of those things. You need a view of both the systems as well as the customer expectations. And what I'm finding is that there are a lot of companies that are starting to introduce performance earlier into the architecture planning, into the business and the stakeholder conversations. And when they do that, what comes out? Well, what comes out is better, clearer understanding of what the business intends to measure, so that then we can start to say, what does that mean from a more technical perspective? SLAs, what needs to be in place? What context needs to be there, so that one of your focus groups that might have a problem is tracked to the actual reasons why they were having latency or there were scalability issues on a particular subsystem, right? That all starts by really having clear, not just SLAs, but SLOs, service level objectives, and SLI, service level indicators. And that's more on the technical side, but it's a bridge between those two things. It's an artifact of both the business and the technical systems. And some people from the past, they think, oh, I've tried that before. I've tried to put early non-functional requirements in. Well, we don't get to say, let's stop trying, right? What we need to do is learn from our mistakes, learn from our lessons, understand better how to make the advocacy and make the point. Ultimately, tie things to revenue. Even if you're not you don't think you're a revenue, like Eliyahu Goldratt says in the goal, every organization makes money, right? In some way, shape, or form. So if the money's not flowing, or if you don't attach the imperative for performance to the revenue or the business stream, then maybe start there, and then you'll get better results with conversations around SLAs, SLOs, and SLIs.
Yeah, and actually in the report itself, we captured some very interesting initiatives, as simple as placing a production screen displaying what is the result on business in the financial flows, but also capturing the technical KPI. So all of these done by companies. Placing monitors on open space, which is obviously not being really used today because of the context, but placing production screens with all production metrics in front of every stakeholders, disregarding where they fit in business, marketing, because because we are after the same goal. So there are some also more simple ways of trying to close the gaps and making everybody aware of the outcome, the output of our collaborative work.
And over time.
Yeah.
And over time too. It's not enough just to
Yes.
barf up an apdex to people and then also have what the CPU is on some computer. That's way too much of a gap. You need to have a trend based that focuses on the high level, a few key high level indicators at the customer experience level, as well as some of the key indicators that you know in your infrastructure as you're working through. You get comfortable with what are the pain points, what are the likely choke points and bottlenecks. And so throwing those up together and then doing a time series on those is actually one of the most powerful things to do for stakeholders who don't necessarily know what or why a particular piece of information is necessary, but when they see the trend match each other in some semi-linear way, it's a lot easier to go, oh, what's that? And what do we do about that?
Yeah. So probably let's move on, because there's one aspect that we've not explained so far is what do we mean by performance engineering, right? And it's actually a bit surprising in 2020. There's actually very little content and understanding of what is this discipline of performance engineering. And what it actually means, what it involves, and what are the related topics. And usually we talk about performance testing, performance monitoring, and all these different topics. And it's often too much, too restricted to non-functional, just to be in a black box of we're going to be doing non-functional requirements and assessing these teams, and at the end in the 11th hour of a project. And I'm only going to check, if the connection speed, memory use, what you've been just saying, the throughput. So it's often regarded, because we have the word testing, monitoring, engineering, too much as a technology-centric, rather than one that is really providing this sort of business-related recommendations, right? Everything should actually be linked together. So it's not just something that is right here to validate, to put like a checkbox. Oh, I've done performance testing, right? Or I've done monitoring, right? And during some point in the life cycle. I think it's really a matter of all together. So I think there's three things that I have in mind when I talk about performance engineering. The first one is applications performance is this overarching principle against which we bear, disregarding where we fit in the org chart, equal responsibility and accountability. That is a fundamental aspect. It is a collaborative discipline. It involves people with different skills, with different roles, with different responsibilities, with complementary backgrounds, working together to achieve the same goal of figuring out how to deliver this one aspect of quality, which is performance, and has so many different aspects of performance, as I was sharing earlier. And it really focuses on ensuring that business continuity, but also verifying that we have, as you were saying earlier, comply also with these changing patterns, the change of business, right? And potentially as well, there's also this cost element as well, how to control cost, because we know performance can be, if you do it wrong, we can actually throw away infra and triple and quadruple the amount of infra just to cover poor performance, because one might lack knowledge, right? So also a discipline that is kept to control costs, especially around infrastructure. So this is what I have in mind. But it's not again just performance. It's not just again back to technical things. It has to be rooted in the culture, and the culture actually is also reflected by the way we organize. Far too often have we seen amazing performance testers, amazing performance monitoring engineers doing a great job here, but because the organizations have silo, they can't work together. And the result is actually not that great performance in the end for the end user and for the employee, right? So all in all is embedded into these fundamental principles on the DNA level for the company, the way we are organized, but also the way we have implemented performance, the various aspects of performance. Right. Paul, would you agree with that?
Yeah, in an ideal world, right, we would have top-down complete alignment. That takes time though, right? I imagine there's a few people on the call going, wow, if that's what I need, if I need to embed this all in the culture, I've got a long way to go, and I don't think I'm going to do that in my lifetime. Well, it's not just about you, it's about the people around you. One of the tactical things that we, at least as performance engineers or performance-minded people, right, stakeholders and product owners that have already felt the pain and suffering of not thinking about this ahead of time, people who know it's right to advocate for a thing, the way to start spreading this around, by the way, in a good way, under COVID time, that's a different proposition, but spreading around good seeds of performance engineering mindset is starting to ask the question why. Asking the question why allows you, gives you the right from, the third bubble here, testing for performance, to ask the question, why are we doing these things versus those things? Why is this feature not important? Why is this feature important? Where have we made that decision? Why are the systems behaving like they're behaving? Can I get an architectural diagram, please? That starts to buy you into the ones on the left of that, which is developing for performance. You start asking questions why, right? If you have any opportunity to do so, it spreads this mindset of, wait a second, this is important. Goes to classic things. You said something earlier, which was, there's a lack of knowledge and practice and so on and so forth. There's not. It's spread around. Every single one of our customers has some kind of performance practice in place. At least whatever, there's no one journey, but there are a set of principles and practices. I've got a stack of books, 6, 7 of the books that I've ordered over the course of 3 months, because I'm thinking of doing my own with a collaboration with 20 other people. And just to consolidate the fact that there is knowledge out there. First off, it's just hard to gather it all together, which I'm trying to solve. The second one is you got to want it. And there are some people who just want to turn out tests, but the tests don't tell us why, right? The tests aren't connected to the SLOs necessarily, right? They're an outcome. They're a way to prove it. It's just the crap we got to do to get the meaningful feedback in the right places. And once you get that feedback and you start applying it to the right teams in the way that makes sense for them, they're going to invite you back to the table. So that's how you organically grow performance across this thing. Some people do it top-down initiative, other people do it organically. It's a both and there, right? Both of those could help.
A lot of food for thought in just half an hour. All right, let's move on. And I'm conscious that we okay, let's move on again to the next one. One of the, so let's probably just not spend too much time on the importance of culture, because we've already discussed it quite at length already. I think the one thing that is still a bit surprising is only 21%, you can see here, the second line, only 21% of respondents are claiming that applications performance is an integral part of the brand equity. So not just to repeat what we've been saying, but it's, just to make it easier for us as performance engineers, just to achieve good quality, to have the tool, the process, the time to do the job appropriately. I think there's also going to be the need of a sort of a top-down initiative for customers. So I think what I've been sharing earlier, this is more like an ambition. This is a roadmap. This is what needs to happen in order to embed performance at every stake of our life, and especially as we change, right? And I think this is really something that I've tried to set in the report. It's not just about trends, but also what is the route, what is the journey that we have to go through to reach what ambition, right? And the why is actually very important, as you said. So let's move on to the next one. And I was a little bit disturbing, let's say. So we assessed, you can see here, for which app type, what response time does your organization perceive as quality, right? And to be honest, guys, I was shocked. I mean, I maybe I'm naive here, but I don't understand why there's such a gap, a difference between my expectations or our expectations as an end user, right? I expect things to go fast, or I want to just swap mobile apps, and that's the thing that we've been discussing, knowing for, let's say, since 08 or 09. And now, expectations, we perceive as professional, 3, 5, 4 seconds are being, acceptable for web apps. In a certain aspect, yes, I mean, I think we can wait, but I'm still surprised, like especially for the mobile side, 32% said 6 to 10 seconds. I mean, I don't get why there's such a gap between our world of being professional and our expectation and user. So it sounds like we are bipolar. We have two different minds when it comes to applications performance, and I just don't get that point. What's your take on that, Paul?
Well, one of my friends, Elliot Ashton, he said, 3 seconds isn't a thing anymore, right? And we're not talking about, oh, well, maybe it's 4 or 5 or 6 or 7. No. That's so high level. It might be a general benchmark, but when you actually break it down into what he also calls the totality of performance, the whole thinking around what is the experience, that's where you start to get into mobile. What is a page on mobile, right? Especially when it goes through various providers to get thinned out and streamlined, right? You got to think about the end-to-end chain. And certainly doing performance monitoring, performance and load testing on let's say your mobile apps gets you a sense of the system elements. But there's also the need to actually look and see from those microtransactions, again, going back to what are the most imperative parts of that mobile system based on user usage, right? So contextualizing, moving away from this notion of 3 seconds as if it's a mandate, which sometimes it is in your organization, to actually saying, no, there should be a mandate for less than 1 second for this type of interaction, and maybe 4 seconds for this type of interaction. Let's get more precise as to what users actually perceive as useful or not. So that's how I would say. I mean, we give this just to get a general sense at a high level, but
yeah.
My guess is that when you drill down into these things, by the way, there's also people who don't actually use their own apps, right? What does it mean for somebody who's working on a loan application at a financial institution? Are they going to take their app home like they do with Netflix or Amazon shopping and use it every day? No. So they're kind of disconnected from the user experience themselves from a practitioner perspective. What brings that context back in is a business imperative to be connected to the customer experience and to be precise about your metrics.
Yeah, and this actually leads us to probably the next chapter, which is the way companies are organized here. So yes, there are some results here, trying to understand who deals with performance engineering, whether it's testing or monitoring. Monitoring obviously results often with productions. However, there's also some aspect of monitoring that is embedded into the performance testing aspects. But from all the interviews, so we tried in the next slide to present, if you want to go, yeah, this one, a sort of summary of the way mature organizations are organized when it comes to performance. So in the middle, you have Agile QA delivery. It's really where performance engineers participate within the feature team, within the in-sprint effort, to the definition of done, to validating the requirements, to being the gap between business and dev, just really to validate the DoD, and to put in place all the automation on unit performance testing, put in place the monitoring aspect of it, helping with the implementation of performance activities very early, alongside developers. So there's a significant amount of investment that is being done here, really embedded performance within the feature team, and sometimes it's not actually, there's no one responsible for performance as such, but there's awareness, strong awareness and considerations by developers to develop code which are performance related. The other topic, which is on the right side, is this end-to-end squad. And this is probably where, because performance is regarded still as non-functional requirements, it's actually done by a team of experts here. So we, in the report, figured out that we are witnessing the death of the old-fashioned COE here. However, there are still some very much relevance about having an end-to-end squad, doing performing integration testing, verifying, to your point earlier, what is what is going to be the performance from an end user perspective, right? And sometimes also doing some point performance testing on top on a specific projects. So there's these various ways of injecting performance at very different levels of the organizations as well. There's in a few companies, we've also witnessed what we call the client management office, which is really the advocate of business and making sure that the business requirements from a performance perspective are rightly defined, which is sometimes a bit tough with performance, and how they are actually turned into QA practices. So it is really the gap between the two. And it obviously depends on the type of apps, depends on the maturity, depends how we organize. But this is, what we've seen overall as a during the research that we've done from the report.
Yeah, and I'd say there's rarely one way, right? This just happens to be an aggregate of what some of the themes that we see. But on the other hand, I mean, every company is different. Some may have a lot of one part of this diagram and a little of the other, and they're changing that. The point is, whatever your IT operational activities and responsibilities map looks like, it should be fitting what needs to happen from a business perspective, not business mandating how IT work, but IT and business working together means that IT organizations have to figure out a way to reduce toil, to make things more efficient, right? As it turns out, performance engineering downstream reduces toil from operations, not just in Sev 1 and firefighting, but also in comprehending and understanding and capacity planning and all sorts of stuff. And it can also do the same thing. I was on with a customer that described their COE not as a center of excellence, but a center of enablement. And I thought that was such a useful minor tweak. It's just one word, but it means so much different. I love to see that pattern grow, right? A center of enablement allows people to understand how to do a thing, make it easy to do the right thing, make it sort of hard to do the wrong thing, but also they're always there so that new people learn new things from different groups, and also have the opportunity to look across the portfolios and say, where's the toil? Where's the pain? Where's the priority that we can attack best?
And that's very interesting, because that resonates actually with one of our customers who has implemented what they called an academy, and it's actually aligned with being a center of enablement, as you just said, one that is here, to share best practices or good practices, so on tooling, on processes of integrations, but also on this community, evolving this community around performance and the awareness around performance. And that, I think this is going to be a little close to what you've just said now.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go, and I'm sure you have a lot of things to share about that now in terms of practices and integrations of performance with CI/CD. So yeah.
Sure. So when it comes to the way that people do what they do, right? Again, aggregates, everybody's slightly different, but you might notice that we spend a lot of time doing scripting, right? That's one of the key things that obviously Neotis and Neoload really tries to attack full on, is to reduce the size of the boulder between you and your actual problem, which is getting feedback about performance, particularly about load testing, and sharing that with the rest of the team, right? But then there's also that almost more than 30% of the building test automation and test results analysis, which we're also really trying to attack, especially in 2021, really trying to make it a lot easier to focus on the things that matter to teams, make it more contextual to teams, not just customized reports, but automatically pick up on things, integrating with various different APM solutions to really provide a single source of truth. And then you notice towards the end, 20%, performance monitoring and production. Just a quick note, I occasionally hear this myth that load testing is only a pre-production solution. I don't think so, because a lot of our customers are actually properly testing in production, not just the ones that are like e-commerce, but actual ones that either have the opportunity to stand up their own stacks. They've gotten mature on the automation process. So a lot of these areas of work really depend on what the maturity is and what the skill sets are of the people doing that work. I was surprised and a little bit disappointed with the notion of interactions with business teams. Imagine if you could take the bottom 3 groups and make that at most 50%, right? Reduce the time spent, not the importance, right? But the time spent on that, and give yourself back a significant portion of time to actually have interactions with business teams that focus on the customer experience, right? That would be a significant improvement in the way I think a lot of people tend to go at this stuff. It's a lot easier to write the test and click the button that you think you're done without actually talking with the right stakeholders at this point.
Yeah. Next one, Stefan. So we have only 2 minutes left. So if you just want to comment this one briefly.
Yeah, I think everybody's we're starting to take the approach of automate as much as possible. That doesn't mean automate all the things, but it puts processes and sometimes silos through the lens of why is this thing as hard as it is. And so what we're finding is a lot of teams will actually start doing continuous performance and load testing in pipelines, starting with the priority of APIs, critical APIs. I wish I could go into a number of customer stories, but I don't have time. That really started there, and then they were able to grow their entire process out to be a codified process that allows the subject matter expertise and experts to start layering in guardrails into their performance testing practices that are already in CI, starting to layer on those things like, SLAs, proper global SLAs and stuff, and really working closely with the team. Point is, if it doesn't fit in this, it doesn't look like modern software delivery. And so that's why we spend a pretty good chunk of our time at Neotis making sure that, our load testing solution fits right alongside any of your other continuous testing processes.
So let's just move to a couple of the final ones here. We won't comment this one too much here, but I think the only thing is obviously performance testing is not a siloed activity. And in the report, there's actually much more to say about how companies have integrated performance testing with other testing activities, and probably the one that is most fundamental is functional testing. And we are giving in the report some crisp examples about how customers and companies are integrated performance and functional testing in the same scenario, the integration with test data management. And obviously you'll see more in the report around the integrations on CI/CD and the trends behind it and what we think of it. Still, we don't want to overlook the critical importance of monitoring and testing, especially on that specific topic. Again, if you want to spend a bit more time on that, I think that the report is very useful. The next slide is obviously we could not just close the report without figuring out how to measure performance engineering. So obviously, we do not give an exhaustive list of KPIs. Okay, we have asked respondents to order and give a rank of the type of KPI they're using. But again, it's just an indication that might matter to some, but not to others. There's probably just a different perspective that we're taking here, is to actually measure two aspects of our work. So it's efficiency and effectiveness, right? So one really is about measuring the output, the outcome of our work, the quality of performance in productions, and all the KPIs that I've talked a little bit earlier. But there's also the way that we need to measure the way we are driving things, the how. Are we using the resources to the best of our capabilities? Are we using the budget we have to do the right things? So there's a different set of KPIs, which is not what you have on the right-hand side, but also measuring the how we drive things. So we try to give that, again, a different perspective in the report, which are things that we do not necessarily talk often as practitioners. And the last one, probably, Paul, where I will ask you, it's about the future. So how do you think, our industry will evolve, in the next, in the next 12 months. So we have a few insights here, how customers will invest, what we'll do as an industry, the importance of AI, the importance of gathering social media and user sentiment in performance testing, increasing the accuracy of performance. What's your stake on the future, on the close future?
Sure. So there's a couple of them. The top two are about production, and quite frankly, for a lot of us, production is great, but it's too late, right? And we know that there are plenty of things that we can do beforehand that we're just having a hard time getting the business to understand how to prioritize to make that not the case, right? That we're leaving things to actual production to find out and to solve. And then there's other things that you can't know until you're in production. And what do you do with that knowledge? So that's where we get this predictive test selection and optimization, right? Which is some of the work that we're doing and innovating around feedback from production at Neotis to really figure out, given your production situation, what's the coverage that you really should have in pre-production, right? What should you be focusing that the prior slide about, your 15% or 20% of your testing activities go to just scripting, right? Which are the places that really matter the most? The one thing I'm still kind of worried about in the industry is this idea of zero touch, or this idea of, like AI is going to solve the problem. No black box works the way you want it to unless you understand a little bit about how that black box works. We got plenty of customers who are wrapping up machine learning models and algorithms in APIs and then load testing and performance testing them. Some are even using our load testing tool to eat through tons of regression data that you have to put through those services to prove that the algorithm did better or did worse. So they're just using the parallelism of our tool to go through millions and millions of rows too. But this notion of zero touch, I think, is sort of, quite frankly, I wish I didn't have to deal with this. I wish performance could just go away and be solved magically. I don't think it ever should be zero touch. I don't think it should be toilsome, right? Which is a lot of what our product really tries to reduce on. But I don't think you should ever just be completely zero touch and not knowledgeable about the performance of your systems and why they do and don't. Because at the end of the day, one of the last slide talked about business outcomes. I would say a pretty critical business outcome of doing the testing with that large education platform I mentioned, was that they realized that their cloud provider, AWS, has a limit of how long it takes to reprovision volumes. And they wouldn't have known that had they not been putting 2 or 3x load. And they'd have that problem in production, and they'd be running around 5 hours waiting, basically just making changes and then waiting 5 hours for that volume to be reprovisioned so they can make changes again, right? That to me is a business outcome, a positive business outcome of learning the process and learning what your systems actually do under load. So I guess my point is, I take a skeptical eye on the idea of, like, everybody wants zero touch, but there is no such thing. Not exactly.
So
Well,
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Antoine. Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Thank you everybody for having joined this webinar. We hope you found it interesting. Just so you know, the recording of this webinar will be shared shortly by email. You will receive it shortly, as well as the link to download the full reports, because Paul and Antoine gave us some insights coming out of it, but there are a lot more to read in it. If you have any question, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You will find our contact into the thank you email. Once again, thank you everybody. Thank you to our speaker, and I wish you a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.